The Last of Us series has cemented itself as both a cultural and international staple in the gaming world. With its rich environments, complex characters, and story generally regarded as an A-tier Hollywood blockbuster, The Last of Us found its way into the hearts of many back in 2013. And in 2020, that love either swelled into a balloon or got taken out back and got bludgeoned with a golf club. The Last of Us Part 2, spoilers if you've been living like a hermit for the past 5 years, made the daring choice of killing off one of the first game's beloved heartthrobs and main character, Joel, an over 50-year-old man whose personal philosophy of do anything to protect those you love ultimately became his downfall. The story follows Ellie and her unwinding sickness to get revenge on the one who killed Joel, all while you are put into the shoes of said killer to paint the other side perspective of someone coming off of what Ellie's journey currently consists of to evolving into a better version of what Joel's journey in Part 1 ends up. All this to say that both The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2, both in my god-honest opinion, have this excellent and consistent follow-through throughout both games of seriousness that, even if you disagree with the choices, can at least be understood why the characters went in this direction, or bare minimum, the pieces to form the conclusion are present somewhere in the narrative. HBO's doesn't, though. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely wanted this show to succeed, and I personally think HBO's The Last of Us has a great amount of moments in both seasons that are both one-to-one with the original, as well as differences that either flesh out characters as we know, or even just freshen up a story that, as players, we've all come to know like the back of our hands. But that is not to say that the show is perfect, and a lot of times, it really feels like they made this just to raise your hopes and just piss you off sometimes. Season 2 is probably where the directors behind the show really decided that it was time to leave the original audience out to dry. Season 1 covers the entirety of the first game, and personally, I think it does it rather well. Bella Ramsey almost perfectly captures Ellie's sassy, reckless, yet endearing attitude of a 14-year-old girl, and Pedro Pascal, despite feeling a bit overcasted as of late, plays Joel's hardened, stoic exterior close to on par with how it is presented in the game. In Season 2, they play the same characters. Exactly the same.
I got bit, everybody!
Hey!
I got bit!
Hey! Hey!
I'm immune!
Whoa! Hey! I swear, you and my brother, same goddamn fucking person.
After 5 years, an emotionally world-changing revelation, an assload of fighting, killing, community bonding, and what should be a time of developmental maturity, also known as post-puberty, both Joel and Ellie in the show remain exactly the same. Now, Joel can get a slight pass for this. He's had his development in the first season, and emotionally, he's calmed down for it to make sense to say part of him some years later.
What town?
Ellie, on the other hand, should not be the same, to any degree. Her first opening moments is her training to fight under Jesse's tutelage, and even after the adrenaline of combat and having her nose bled amidst it, she still talks to Jesse like an early teen talking to an adult.
Don't do that again.
Hell, she still just generally talks like a child. Boom, motherfucker, shut up, dude. Come on. Can it? Season 2 undertakes the Ellie side of things of the course of Part 2's plot, and right out the gate, there's a sense of hope in the show. Jackson actually looks like an entire proper settlement, and they've even gone ahead an entire attack on the place to truly display just how strong of a city the place has become. And that's kind of just the end of the list of good things this season brings. Joel goes to therapy now to get through his choice of trading the world for Ellie at the hospital and the ramifications that has had on the relationship, while also dancing around the actual details of what actually went down. And this helps to show that Joel's generally gone and lost a bit of his abrasive nature over the years, which helps and lends some credence to why Joel was a bit more kind in the game, which we wish we would have gotten to see both either in the show or in the game, but who cares at this point? Me, kind of. Abby, who the show-only viewers got robbed of the Joel's killer twist within the first opening minutes of the season, finds herself within reach of Jackson in the first episode, after the whole Seth fiasco. And the next episode snowballs into the Jackson fight that I just mentioned with a horde of infected and a snowstorm, which eventually leads to Tommy hitting a bloater with a flamethrower until it does the stupidest trope of having the enemy fall to their knees right before it kills the character of importance within a matter of seconds. I hate this part with my whole heart. There were so many other ways they could have made Tommy look so much more badass here. And instead, they went and had him hustling from side to side with the most glaringly obvious sense of choreographed movements, making it seem so theater-like. For seemingly top-tier directors and writers, they really gotta be better than this. Come on, man. Pissing me off. All this to culminate in the episode's big hitter, Joel's death. The Horde attacks both Jackson as well as surrounding lookouts, of which Abby, Joel, and even Dina find themselves almost trapped in by. This switch up with Dina instead of Tommy actually justifies why Abby would be able to match Joel's face to his name through Abby hearing Dina shouting his name amid all the scuffle and noise from the Horde outside. Abby makes Joel and Dina believe they have survivors who can help with the attack on Jackson, getting them alone with a band of remaining Fireflies to eventually execute him. On the side, obviously instead of Dina, Ellie tackles her lookout route with Jesse instead, which, just to put this out there, Jesse is probably the best character in this show so far, only second to Josh Peck. Here, Jesse and Ellie have their intermitting chat, and it's here where you witness Ellie be...
Check it.
...more childlike, so to speak. She's 14. The show says she's 19, but she is still 14. Anywho, Jesse and Ellie hold out the snowstorm that's tag-teaming the Horde of Infected, and amidst all of that, Joel's getting compliments from his executioner.
Pretty handsome.
That I actually don't have a problem with. Abby starts the season off by listing off traits people use to mention Joel in order to find him, and some were either compliments straight up, or could easily be viewed as much in the right tone or the right context. And in her spiel where she begins going through with killing him, she begins it off with listing off the traits again and snarkily compliments them in a kind of facetious tone.
Pretty handsome.
But if you're familiar with how she gives the whole speech from the game, the whole ordeal is nothing but balls to the wall serious, to the point she doesn't even waste time getting right to business. No! Joel's part in this is extremely underwhelming though, and I really hated that. In the game, his old tough guy demeanor surfaces one more time just to cut off Abby from her whole tangent, and at least in his final moments, his whole last words were kind of just badass. In the show, he just annoyingly tells Abby to shut up and do it already, like a disgruntled dad telling his son to go take out the trash. Ellie shows up, gets held down, and Joel gets the old putt-putt treatment, but instead of the old one-hit Wonder Bread action, Abby gets straight to the point and stabs Joel in the neck with the pointed end of the golf club she was using. Which, I don't know, it felt kind of ridiculous and a little out of left field. I don't know, it kind of pulled me out of the scene a little, but it works, I guess. They did end it with Ashley Johnson singing Through the Valley like she did in the original reveal for part 2, and that had me kicking my feet like a little schoolgirl again. So, bonus points for that, guys. Episode 3 starts up with Tommy mourning Joel after the loss amid Jackson's recovery, and Ellie waking up in their local hospital wing. And it just goes to show that even after the world ends, there still remains patients screaming in the hallways somewhere all the time. Ellie gets some therapeutic small talk, and it starts to creep up how writing for the show's big glaring difference from the game is nuance and detail. Not that there's more here, but less. The little therapy talks with Gale is this season's attempt at delving into the character's emotions, and acts more as a cop-out for properly writing these characters' emotions or having the actors display their acting chops by emoting or having nuanced expressions. In the game, most of Ellie's growth, emotion, mood, and pretty much a general state of mind was never told, never explicitly expressed, barring some key moments where the situation allowed it. A sigh here, her tone there, her expression, her aggression, her wording, her facial emoting. This is what a lot of people loved about the original games. This is something expertly done in the original stories, and something just as expertly lost in the show, which sucks because this is Neil Druckmann's writing style and attention to detail, as shown in his pedigree in both Part 1 and Part 2, and even the Left Behind short story while we're at it. The show doesn't really leave room for interpretation. There's no nuance, there's no dig beneath the surface understandings, there's nothing other than what's in your face. and that becomes a big problem. The episode goes on to put Ellie's interest of going and finding Abby into a town hall meeting type of moment, where Ellie's got to put up this facade of, this is actually to get justice for those who were lost that night in Jackson. And unfortunately, not enough of the voters
The proposal
bought it,
is rejected.
and declined for Ellie to go to Seattle with an established crew. However, it, for no justifiable reason as of yet, made the homophobe from the original game, Seth, for some reason try to get some brownie points by calling the entire town a bunch of victims for not going out and getting their get back. Seemingly siding with Ellie, and some odd minutes later into the episode, helps her both get Ellie and Dina out of Jackson, but also arm Ellie with a better gun for her journey, presumably as some sort of olive branch for both her, and more likely, the audience. This didn't need to happen, and it feels weird not going with the original go rescue Tommy from his dumbass antics in the original. And that change there screws up the direction for the rest of the season. Tommy not being in Seattle leaves Ellie and Dina a bit aimless and makes the subsequent milestones they reach in getting Abby feel awfully convenient. Instead of Ellie searching Seattle for Tommy and picking up his bloody trail, she's doing convenient guesswork in finding Abby. Rather than having the guise of needing to find Tommy through finding the people who killed Joel, she sees WLF sign on top of a building. I have seen less telegraphing in Expedition 33. There's no interesting meat on the bones from one interesting plot point to the next. The character building in between the large impact points are just genuinely boring, uninteresting, and not to mention unfaithful. It's all incredibly safe and predictable despite not knowing how they'll change some of the scenes. They do still have moments where some changes actually proved interesting and keeping you on your toes with some excitement, like the scene of Ellie revealing she's immune to Dina. In the game, Ellie falls down and breaks her gas mask, which leads Ellie to displaying her immunity before having to make a break for the theater when running from a horde. In the show, since at this point spores and airborne spreading has yet to actually exist until this point, they have to actually spin it where Ellie actually gets bitten trying to protect Dina from infected. Once they both make it to the theater, game Ellie has some small talk with Dina revealing her first bite, and it's all relatively simple and calm. TV Ellie, once both are safely inside the theater, tries to secure the front door to the place, and is then met with Dina, gun drawn, trained on her. Dina's still shaken up both from the horde and seeing Ellie get bitten without the immunity knowledge, and believes that, in protecting her, Dina watched firsthand Ellie sign her death certificate. This section is a bit nail-biting, and I love that. It's probably my favorite change in the entire show. And yes, I am completely disconnecting it from Dina's pregnancy.
I'm gonna be a dad.
You've all probably heard the hubbub about it, but Dina, in the heat of the moment, breaks the tension with her own secret, revealing that she's pregnant to Ellie.
I'm pregnant.
In-game, Ellie responds to this news rudely but reasonably, as she gets a bit pissed at having this news dropped on her, despite having ample time to change course for the sake of pregnant Dina, for both her and her future child's sake. TV Ellie doesn't give enough acknowledgement or care to the notion that Dina, as much as it sucks to hear, is going to be both a burden and slow both her and Ellie down, and is going to need to be doubly cared for, which they cut themselves off from having easy access to supplies and treatment for when they left the only known place that could deliver a baby without having the mom having sepsis. Ellie in the show practically never acknowledges this from then on, and even puts her further into danger when, in-game, Ellie proceeds every situation by herself, or at least tries to.
I'd let you do this on your own.
This adaptation makes Ellie out to being more stupid than she ever was in the original game. The solo treks through Seattle puts Ellie's intelligence of survival on full display, and shows her capabilities, practically leveling the entire state of Washington's remaining populace down to a quarter as a result. TV Ellie doesn't even do the carpet crawl.
Right in here!
Making this a 0 out of 10. Episode 5 begins by introducing spores. Could have just done that a while ago, but sure, waste my time, why don't you? Ellie and Dina venture out to find Nora after doing radio triangles. Ellie finally clicks that this is probably a dumb quest to embark on, with a knowingly pregnant woman and love of your life being put in more danger than is worth it. And then Dina hits her with a lore update, trying to mirror her Joel incident, and that somehow justifies Dina being part of Ellie's revenge quest, when it would only make sense as far as Dina understanding her need, not her to join her in the throes. But whatever, she's probably gonna get killed anyway. Jesse, the MVP, shows up to save the two from certain death. Certain avoidable death, mind you. The trio escape from the militia group, who are somehow missing several shots on the slowest people on the planet, despite the fact they were meant to stand guard for any threats coming by. So I guess everybody's a stormtrooper, even the military. The three then end up in the woods, get to watch some nerd lose his lunch. Dina gets an arrow in the leg. Ellie proceeds to cause a distraction so Jesse and Dina can get away safely. And despite watching her girlfriend, of whom is pregnant, get wounded and is in deep enemy territory, the directors remember that Ellie's actually supposed to be revenge-driven, when this whole time she seemed like she's been more mildly interested in doing stuff in Joel's name. But she's got a meeting at 10, so it's gonna have to get pushed back to 11. Point is, she only remembers it's a revenge story when the directors and writers remember it, flooding the runtime with useless malarkey like it was of medieval Englishmen throwing their toilet buildup out the window. She did beat the crap out of Nora, though, and that was actually kind of cool, if I'm being honest. The only thing actually kind of faithful to the game, and further evidence that it isn't Bella's acting, it's the writing direction. Episode 6 begins with something completely fresh here, with a flashback to Joel's younger years and... Holy shit. Is that fucking Lala? Anyways, Joel, in an attempt to protect baby Tommy, tries to take the blame for Tommy buying weed off someone, as their dad has the history with him of physical abuse. The tried and still trying dad plus belt action. This encounter ends with Joel's father having a talk with him about how his parents were to him, and how he's not as bad as a dad as them. And he ends up with him saying,
I hope you do a little better than me.
What follows is pretty much all of the Ellie and Joel flashbacks, ranging from the first one where she goes to the moon, to Ellie talking to Joel on the porch at the end of the game. But with the change-up of Ellie learning what Joel did at the hospital through a Jackson flashback, where Joel kills Gil's then-infected husband, despite his pleas to see his wife and say goodbye to her while he was still in a functioning state. Joel kills him solely to protect Ellie, as he presents as a, if even extremely slightly, a possible threat to Ellie's safety, especially if brought to Jackson where he could endanger everybody he loves. When Joel lies to Gail about her husband's death and final words, Ellie puts Joel in blast for it in front of her, and sees the look in his eyes, the same look he gave Ellie when he lied about the Fireflies in Salt Lake City. And that was all she needed to confirm her suspicions about him, of which you see her contemplating the truthfulness of her in her lonesome. Proceeding to the last talk Ellie and Joel have, the porch moment, the final flashback ends, with Joel parroting his father with the same line.
I hope you do a little better than me.
Which, given what we are supposed to be seeing in Ellie now, is a nod towards Ellie actively destroying his hopes by doing even worse than him. Or at least that's what the directors were hoping by this takeaway, since they literally say in the behind-the-scenes segment they have after every goddamn episode. Speaking of which, every episode they have a The Making of The Last of Us behind-the-scenes segment showing them or hearing testimonies of them building the episode. You get the writers, the set designers, and even the directors like Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. Neil gets his spotlight moment of how he gets his original story to be shifted in a different way with Craig's ideas, and how they manage to spin and spit out new ideas on paper to input into the new scenes. And Craig just says the most obvious shit, and it pisses me off.
That's them. This isn't our war.
This is not our war.
He might be the entire reason the show is unrecognizable as it is. I know Neil's pedigree. He's not unfamiliar to writing decent characters. I like some of the Mazin shows. What the fuck does he know about video games?
Let me tell you about my community. My community was beaten to death in front of me while I was forced to fucking watch.
What Ellie had was Joel, and he was killed.
Cool. Glad to know your input is literally just reciting everything they literally just said. Episode 7, the final episode... Wait, what? Really? It's over already? Jesus, I thought it'd take a little bit longer for this whole part to get this fleshed out. Okay. Episode 7 begins with Jessie tending to a wounded Dina, attempting to subside her pain by inducing fetal alcohol syndrome. Ellie returns after viciously mauling women of color, and appears rather unfazed by it all at first, but then again, I'm more used to the shock-induced woman that didn't have a pincushion for her baby mama. Despite a few tweaks, this scene plays pretty on par with the original, and even explores the idea of Ellie having doubts and her selfish escapade as she then reveals to Dina what Joel did back at the Firefly base in Salt Lake City, and specifically, how Joel killed Abby's dad. And, as a slight callback to episode 5, Dina mentions that whatever Joel did to those people, he didn't deserve the violence he got brought to his doorstep, to which Ellie lies by omission what Joel did until now. Dina then ends the conversation with,
"We need to go home."
and lies back down, visibly enthroned over this revelation. This scene is a standout highlight to how you don't need to reinvent the wheel for an adaptation, and that following the source material and simply bringing that into a medium is all you really need to do. Not try and make your mark on the story by spinning it in a fashion that deters the people who loved it and are why it became popular as it is. It also means you can do this shirt scene without it costing bajillion dollars, so keep that in mind. The episode continues with Ellie and Jessie going to meet with Tommy at a lookout in order to return home. Ellie and Jessie bicker with each other, and...
I'm gonna be a father, which means I can't die.
Obvious writing is obvious. A couple minutes later, the two make their way through the storm that is definitely approaching and run into an escaping Seraphite and some WLF members, capturing, interrogating, and disrobing him before dragging him off, presumably to be transported or executed. Ellie attempts to try and help the Seraphite, twice in fact, but is stopped by the loving and level-headed Jessie. This part kind of annoyed me. In-game, Ellie wouldn't give a passing glance for someone in need unless it was someone of her own tribe. And she's watched people get strung up, disemboweled, fed to infected, and even killed dogs without so much as a moral compass to stand on. This version of Ellie spinning in circles trying to decide whether she's hellbent on getting justice for Joel or trying to stand on the moral high ground in a war that not only is she not a part of, but would certainly die trying to even attempt to be the hero of. Game Ellie never considered this mental dilemma, because she was too busy playing Jack the Ripper with every soul in Seattle, and was damn good at it too.
I am not dying out here. Not for any of them.
Twice in 5 minutes. Really? Olympic levels of B-tier foreshadowing. The two press on until they reach an overlook with a decent view over the landscape, to which Jessie learns over the radio of Tommy's likely whereabouts. Possibly in need of help, but he really doesn't need it. And Ellie spots the aquarium where Abby is supposedly holed up in. Like in the game, this sets Ellie back into hunt mode with her search for Abby back at the front of her mind, and Jessie attempts to pull her focus back to finding and helping Tommy. He doesn't need it! In the game, this discourse between them is pretty cut and dry. Ellie pulls back saying that might not even be Tommy, but Jessie doesn't buy that, and soon leaves Ellie with a half-hearted departure accompanied by a phony goodbye wishes. The show's attempt at this isn't as cut and dry, as it tries to get Ellie to seem more aggressive with Jessie by fighting with him about values of community and Jessie's supposed hypocrisy. Really just a big attempt at puffing her chest to seem morally superior to Jessie as to why her going off to get her get back is actually a really good reason to let her friends, possibly in need, left to fend for themselves while she selfishly goes to do her dirty work. Now, I get the idea on paper. She's trying her damnedest to get heat off her back for leaving her friends to possibly die, just for her to continue on with this reckless goal that has done nothing but cause everyone trouble. But the execution in this scene is really poor. Ellie just comes off as childish rather than standoffish and insensitive to other people's needs. She just feels like a basic teenager. Every scene Ellie is stubborn or being unreasonable. She doesn't feel like she's blinded with rage or anger. She feels more immature, like she's 15 and got caught drinking by her parents and is lashing out at everyone while also going and drinking more alcohol. Anywho, Ellie goes out to try and make it to the aquarium and sees Isaac, head of the WLF, meeting up with others to go and storm the Seraphites on their island. And then Ellie steals a boat and rides out towards the aquarium only to get hit by a large wave. The show then introduces something entirely new that never happens in the game, and that's Ellie being washed ashore onto the Scar Island. She's noticed by a kid, a Seraphite kid, who then signals to others of Ellie's arrival, and is then dragged helplessly into the woods. There, we get to see the group of Seraphites begin the ritual they conduct that would eventually lead to their victims being pleasantly removed of their entrails. Ellie gets strung up briefly and almost kicks the bucket, pun entirely intended, before the attack on the island begins elsewhere, and Ellie is seemingly let go for no apparent reason. They find a random person washed ashore, bring them to a spot to kill them, but instead of just finishing up quickly, they just drop her and let her go. To which Ellie runs the fuck back to the boat and continues out to the aquarium, making this whole segment entirely pointless. There was no story takeaway, there was no benefit to the characters, it didn't even introduce the attack on the island to the viewers because it was already assumed by the army of WLF members, both saying the storm could help invade, and then seemingly watching them go and invade off-screen. The Seraphite Island segment was entirely a waste of time, and I wish I could get my time back. Please? Ellie reaches the aquarium and makes her way inside, and the beginning of this part had me biting my nails. Not because it's inherently intense or anything, but because in a dark environment where Ellie is trying to get the drop on anybody inside, she's got her flashlight at max output, being like a bat signal, announcing herself to anyone inside. But it's whatever. Who cares? I don't care. I'm fine. Don't look at me like that. She makes her way further until she stumbles across Mel and Owen. This scene plays out less aggressively than it did in the game, which is kind of a miss since this part having a decent amount of violence really helped to sell the reveal that one of the people Ellie killed, Mel, was pregnant. It gave this sense of catharsis that we've been experiencing throughout the game as players that was then flipped on its head once you found out about the unborn child, seemingly nearing being born, making the actions, if not a hard pill to swallow now, turns it into an almost impossible one to take in. The show's version of this plays out quicker than normal, making it all happen so fast even to Ellie. In response to Owen trying to shoot Ellie, Ellie fires at Owen, hitting him in the throat, going through and seemingly cutting Mel's neck right behind him. In a desperate attempt, with her final moments, she begs Ellie to cut the baby out of her before she's gone, making it incredibly apparent to Ellie that she was pregnant.
I'm gonna kill your kid in front of you.
Just like in the game, Tommy and Jesse come in afterwards to collect Ellie and bring her back to the theater to prep to go home. I'll admit, this scene, despite feeling a little too quick for viewers, was pretty good. The added piece of Mel pleading to Ellie to get the baby out before she slips away was an interesting move that really spit the impact of Ellie's violent nature into her own face, and would seemingly act as a decent catalyst for her seeing the damage she's done and the trouble she's caused.
Are you able to make your peace with that?
Guess I'll have to.
Oh, come on, champ. Live a little. You're gonna be a dad. The episode and the season itself draws to a close. Ellie and Jesse have their post-killing 4-people chit-chat, where Jesse confides that he came back for her because he believed if he was ever in a tough spot,
You set the world on fire to save me.
which is just not true. She left him and her favorite surrogate uncle to fend for themselves just so she can rub her rage boner that ended up killing a kid. Something she just chastised you for not doing something about. Ellie, you're supposed to save the kid. That's the only way your point works.
I'm gonna kill your kid.
They finish up their conversation, they go to sleep, wake up the next day, pack up and set out back for Jackson. Ellie then apologizes to Maria upon arrival, and the town for being a little cuckoo crazy. Years passed, and Jesse is now replacing Maria as she and Tommy approach retirement. And The Last of Us ends with a completely different yet satisfying end to Ellie's story. Nah, I'm just pulling your leg. Jesse gets shot and Ellie makes a Punisher reference. This show's kind of bad. No, the show definitely had a lot of moments I liked really well. This season included. Hell, the ending bit with Abby confronting Ellie and Tommy was pretty good. Excluding that part. Abby's performance, despite there being only a few scenes actually of her, are really good. But you start to notice that most, if not all, the good parts in the show, both first and second season, are all either one-to-one recreations of the original scenes, Or are the parts that deviated in a way from the original in a parallel fashion rather than actively steering away? These bits aren't good because they just hit the nostalgia button and thus are just assumed great, but because it maintains the story. The deviations come at the cost of Ellie's character. Ellie constantly fluctuates between how we saw her evolve into in Part 2 to somehow, more times than not, regressing back into the childlike attitude she had in the previous season. Ellie should become and remain this hardened, almost near spitting image of Joel and his teachings, not jumping between how he raised her and whatever the writers assume a teenager trapped in a nearly 20-year-old's body seems like. Most of people's dislike with the show that doesn't have to do with the casting is to do with the stuff that is unlike the original narrative. The criticisms of the show all have to do with how the show walks all over the source material and just generally forgets what the original game is about. And I feel that the main culprit of this is Craig Mazin himself, as a lot of the original materials are sourced from Neil Druckmann's influence, and then Craig Mazin's input then influences the scope in a way that makes for okay television, but bad accuracy.
We have to tell the best television show that we can, but we also know that the whole point of telling The Last of Us as a television show is to honor The Last of Us. If you lose sight of that, then, yes, you will be properly screamed at.
And it's a tale as old as 1993's Super Mario Bros. That when it comes to adapting games to the big screen, they always lose the magic and love of the original material in search of making it more Hollywood, which always ends up alienating the core audience in hopes of grabbing newcomers. The only reasons stuff like Arcane, Fallout, the first season of The Last of Us, the Sonic movies, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, Castlevania, even to some extent the Minecraft movie did also well and received as much praise as they did, is because they didn't aim for writing something that alienated the core original audience of people who grew up or adored the original source material. Hell, Sonic and Arcane are both completely original stories for those games, and they still managed to play to the strengths of those games and the mediums they found themselves in, without shutting out anybody for a different audience. They just trusted their work to be good enough for those who love the games at heart, and just hoped their efforts would extend to those unfamiliar, which is also how it worked for the first season. I don't really know how to end this bit, and I just did a whole bunch of talking, and can't really remember what I said half the time, so, I don't know, cut to black.